When Pope John Paul II visited the Philippines 6 years ago, he attracted vast crowds from a nation of devout believers. But he also attracted believers of another faith, whose hate for the West was so strong they were planning to use the visit as part of a truly diabolical plan. In January '95, just a few days before the Pope was to come down this very road, a fire in a top-floor apartment of this building uncovered an assassination attempt and a chilling plot for international terror.
The group has planned to...
Police photos reveal the apartment's arsenal, litres of chemicals to be turned into bombs, crucifixes that were to help disguise a suicide bomber as a priest so he could get close enough to blow up the Pope. There were even photos to make sure they didn't miss their mark.
Another plot, and they were quite serious about it, was to assassinate the Pope too.
Which they were preparing to do.
That they were preparing to do.
The mastermind was Yemeni-born chemical engineer and Islamic zealot Ramzi Yousef, since directly linked to Osama bin Laden and the first bombing of the World Trade Center. His co-conspirators were Wali Khan Amin Shah and Yousef's lifelong friend, Abdul Hakim Murad.
They certainly weren't acting alone, and they were quite well-traveled, which would mean that they would have been part of a bigger network.
The three men were in the Philippines at a pilot training school. They shared a flat in this apartment block in downtown Manila. It was Murad who started the fire here by accidentally mixing water with the chemicals. Yousef and Wali Khan escaped, but Murad was caught by Philippines police when he returned to retrieve a laptop computer.
I asked him why he hates Americans. I said because of the help they extended to the Israel people, giving war materials and support, financial support, fund support to these people. And in return, these people use this ammunition killing their brother Muslims.
What's that? Time switch?
It's time switch, yeah.
The apartment was groaning with evidence. Chief Superintendent Robert Delphin was able to uncover pieces of a complex three-part terrorist strike, codenamed Operation Bojinka. Besides the plot to kill the Pope, Bojinka had American targets.
The concentration was placing bombs on the different U.S. airlines, flying Manila, and then Hong Kong, Singapore, Manila, U.S., I think Hong Kong, U.S., Singapore, U.S., something like that. I think they were targeting 5 airlines.
The chemical bombs were to be planted on 11 US aircraft soon after the Pope's assassination.
11 planes from Asia going to the United States, and these bombs were set to explode in US airspace. And their idea was to terrorize the airline industry in the United States, so it would shut down.
Just a few weeks before the Pope's visit, Ramzi Yousef had already successfully test-run Operation Bojinka by planting a small chemical bomb under a seat of Philippines Airlines Flight 434 for Tokyo. It killed a passenger and blew a hole in the plane.
The Bojinka was composed of pilots and engineers. They are trained, they're educated, and that they are very dedicated. They're fundamentalist extremists in their religion.
Totally dedicated and tough, Murad would not betray the cause. But after weeks of savage beatings, Murad was tricked into thinking he would be sent to Israel, and he finally revealed how his pilot training was to be used.
I asked him why he took the training on flying, and he mentioned that their plan to place bomb on the plane and crush it on specifically on the Langley CIA building quarters and other American buildings.
Their computers, their laptop computers were recovered, and Filipino computer experts managed to retrieve even the deleted files.
Confession is one thing, but it was backed up with hard data from Murad's laptop computer.
One plot too was to get a small plane in the United States and ram it in the CIA headquarters, and there was some information too that they were intending to ram it into bigger buildings or taller buildings.
Did they name those buildings?
There are, we were trying to confirm it, and we're trying to retrieve all the data, because that was in 1995, but one report by a Filipino technician who actually recovered the files said that they named some buildings, which again included the World Trade Center, I believe the Sears Tower too.
And it established the existence of several terrorist cells in the Philippines which have links to Osama bin Laden.
Superintendent Avelino Rezon was in charge of the Pope's security at the time of Murad's arrest. After seeing terrorists use planes to destroy the World Trade Center, Rezon reopened Murad's 6-year-old file.
I remembered now when we interrogated Murad, he mentioned that he was a skilled pilot trained in the US, in Afghanistan, and also here in the Philippines, who was recruited to undertake a suicide mission.
Since this media conference, Rezon has been gagged by a government not wishing to embarrass America. But he's not alone in believing Murad and Ramzi Yousef were part of the same terrorist group that destroyed the World Trade Towers.
Yeah, I believe the same plan and the same organization, because they planned this long time ago, before even 1995, and I think another group just carry out what they have planned long ago.
In 1997, the full extent of Ramzi Yousef's commitment to terrorism became clear. He was extradited to the United States from Pakistan, not only on conspiracy charges related to Operation Bojinka, but also for masterminding the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. He was jailed for life, plus 240 years. In the Philippines, the link between Yousef's Operation Bojinka and the recent World Trade Center attacks are clear.
Maybe the overall plan of this is still free, and from the group of Murad, I think it was just transferred to the younger generation of this terrorist group.
Ramzi Yousef was the one who tried to bomb the World Trade Center before. They were going to bomb certain very strategic places in the United States and other countries. And that was relayed to the international intelligence community, but apparently no attention was paid to it.
President Gloria Arroyo is diplomatic about the failures of US intelligence 6 years ago.
It's very easy to be wise in hindsight. But I have seen, as Commander-in-Chief, I have seen how many leads you can be faced with, roomfuls of leads and information, and how do you process each one of them? Many of them are wild goose chases. How do you tell which one is a strong lead and which one is a wild goose chase? The fact that nothing happened within the last 6 years, it's understandable to think that such wild plans were really wild and could not be carried out.
The problem, of course, is that years passed. There's no such indication at all. There's been no any major hijacking of an international liner or even a U.S. domestic liner ever since. So I would guess people tend to forget about it and dismiss it, put it in their filing cabinets, and say that that was just a fantastic ambition of a group of terrorists.
The FBI has reopened the Bojinka file, looking for leads previously missed, and is now pursuing bin Laden's financial links to the Philippines. This building is pretty dark and dingy, yet it's the type of place that's become the target in the hunt for bin Laden's international terrorist network. Police now believe that it was from this room that bin Laden's brother-in-law ran a commercial front to funnel funds to Islamic terrorists in the Philippine South. The money went here, to a small but fiercely extreme group of Islamic militants known as the Abu Sayyaf. They're based on the southern island of Basilan, and their leaders, like Gaddafi Janjalani, have strong links to Ramzi Yousef. Janjalani and Yousef fought together in Afghanistan's jihad against the Soviets, and when Janjalani returned to the Philippines, he set up a firebrand cell as part of Osama bin Laden's global push for an Islamic state. He did it with Yousef's help.
Murad, upon interrogation, claimed that Yousef himself had been instructed by an operative of bin Laden to go to Basilan Island in southern Philippines to train a group of Abu Sayyaf members in explosives.
A direct order from bin Laden.
That's what Murad disclosed.
Murad's arrest restricted bin Laden's money flow, and the Abu Sayyaf recently turned to a more spectacular revenue raiser, kidnapping, especially holidaying foreigners.
Our families there.
When they took this group last year, their demand was the release of Ramzi Yousef. But they finally settled for an estimated $18 million in secret ransom payments. 4 months ago, they took a new group, including 3 Americans, one of whom they say they've already beheaded. Fear and clan loyalty mean they can easily slip away, like they did with all the hostages from this army assault in June. Washington's attempts to root out bin Laden's extremist legacy could prove just as difficult. But Manila's ready to join the fight.
Our support is total support, and whatever the U.S. Requires from the Philippines, we will be willing to do. First is our own homegrown terrorism. We should step up our work there, and also our own legislation like money laundering, and then sharing of intelligence. That's really very concrete and very feasible. And then sharing of our airspace and our ground facilities.
Apart from the homegrown Abu Sayyaf, officials here believe they've largely neutralised bin Laden-linked terrorist cells, but warn that may not be the case amid the millions of Muslims in the rest of the region.
We are wondering if there are hidden cells in other Southeast Asian countries. In other countries, Indonesia and Malaysia, there hasn't been equivalent of our intensified campaign against suspected cells.
Fearing a rise of militancy, the Philippines, Indonesia and Malaysia are boosting intelligence sharing. But as the West embarks on its war against Islamic terror, it should not be forgotten that were it not for an accidental fire in a seedy Manila apartment block, this war could have been started by the extremists 6 years ago. The fact they've now succeeded reveals a commitment that won't be easily deterred.